and you don't seem to understand. A shame you seemed an honest man, and all the fears you hold so dear will turn to whisper in your ear. And you know what they say might hurt you, and you know that it means so much, and you don't even feel that thing. I am falling, I am fading, I have lost it
The day has finally come. One of the big four have just been released. And as the Paperverse's project coordinator, I do my best to keep tabs on everyone's projects. But there's a few projects that I myself am super hyped about. This is, of course, one of those games. I'm very excited about today's game, if you couldn't already tell, so I'll get right to it. Conbunn Cardboard is a very fun and relaxed collect-a-thon platformer. If I had to simplify the pitch, I'd say it's the Paperverse equivalent of Mario Odyssey. You're off exploring a small but very dense island, collecting CDs discarded by the main character's friend. It's all quaint, but a perfect setup for such a cozy game. Oh, and speaking of cozy, this game is one that's perfect for a handheld. Now at the time of recording, there's no word on console ports yet, but if you have a Steam Deck or any PC handheld, then you can enjoy the pick up and play nature of this game to the fullest. I started playing this on my desktop, but quickly had to go back to the deck. I just can't give up lying in bed, playing bits and pieces of this at a time. Anyhow, it takes about an hour or two to complete, and while short, it still feels like a perfectly paced adventure. Game length is a strong point of contention for people, and the standards sometimes differ from person to person. Some people aren't satisfied with a game if it doesn't clock in at a certain hour mark, while others will lambast games that are too long. There's no pleasing everyone, but I think where the division comes from is the price. No one wants to pay AAA prices for a game that is shorter than the Anglo-Zanzibar War. We all want our money's worth, and I can confidently say that Conbunn is worth the price of admission. $6 gets you a very fun and focused adventure. Think of a short hike, just with more cardboard and cute bunnies. The game is very light on story, but the world and lore are actually pretty developed. There's also this accompanying webcomic, Está en Español. Necesito terminar de leerlo. It goes more into how the characters came to be and who they are, but for today's focus, I'm just looking at what's on offer in game. This is another gameplay heavy title. It's pretty much all running and jumping, not too dissimilar to your Mario platformer. And like a Mario platformer, there's different ways the running and jumping are augmented. The first is with the course obstacles themselves. Conbunn is not a high-stakes platformer. No lives or game overs to worry about here. Even though the island is situated in a higher elevation, you won't find yourself careening off of ledges often. And even if you do, you get plopped right back where you fell from. Now, I know some would prefer it if this was a bit more punishing for your mistakes, but this is a chilled out game. Playing stuff like this is the gaming equivalent of going on sabbatical. Now, there are a few staples of the 3D platforming genre, your stuff like movement-based platformers, beat blocks, and the occasional sketchy ledge that you're trying to reach. The second way the core gameplay is elevated is in the different micro scenarios you can get faced with. It's the little activities that sometimes break up the core gameplay, stuff like playing soccer or time trial racing. On the surface, it's not much, but it's still fun and adds to whatever you're doing. All in all, gameplay for Conbunn isn't exhaustive, but again, it's very focused. The developers set out to achieve a specific goal in mind, and it shows with how the entire package is presented. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Let's talk about the presentation. The presentation for this game is very pleasant. It's another gem of a game that finds itself in that papercraft aesthetic category, and like I said in the Souls of Limbo episode, achieving this look is not easy. It takes some strong elbow grease to get just right. You know, the game was developed in the Unity engine, and it doesn't actually use the newer URP or Universal Render Pipeline. That's fancy talk for some newfangled tech that makes games look prettier. Though what we do have here, it's a prime example of strong art direction and design over graphical techniques. The first thing my eyes are drawn to are the colors. Color theory and implementation are very important to a game's overall makeup, yet it's seldom mentioned in reviews. I think it's just one of those things that we as folk take for granted, though not me. The colors here really pop. The overall color temperature and composition is vibrant and yet warm at the same time. It gives me the same vibes of chilling at the beach on a near overcast day. Warmish, but not blinding to the eyes. Though color is only a part of the overall image, there's also the graphics. And yeah, they're good. The sprite work is sharp and purposely stilted. You know that effect, right? The one where animators will leave some frames out of an animation to have the viewer fill in the rest with their mind. When done right, it gives off an almost stop motion like effect. You really see it in Connie's walk cycle here. It's very quick and heavy. Personally, I like it, and it gives her a nice walking gait. It makes her feel more at home in her environment. Oh yeah, speaking of environment, environmental design is another strong point in this game's favor. I guess it shouldn't be a surprise when the island is called Cardbun Island, but still, a lot of the models are fashioned after regular craft stuff like construction paper, paint, ink, and of course, perforated cardboard. I've seen a good amount of discourse about this effect around Paper Mario, about how it's a gimmick and Nintendo doesn't need to make Paper Mario really beat paper. All I have to say to that is, I do not want to go back to the days of no papercraft aesthetics. How can you look at Paper Mario the Origami King and not just fall in love with that world? There's a beauty in making these dioramic-like worlds for us to explore, and that beauty is on full display here. Conbunn Island also has a very strong set design. Now, while environment and set designing are similar, the difference is typically in scale. You can have a very wonderfully designed game environment, but be lacking in individual set pieces. Think of those big integral parts of a game, something like the final act in Mario Odyssey. Here, we don't have anything like that, but instead, each distinct area is its own set, if you will. You have the centralish tropical part of the island, followed by a more traditional desert section, a nice wintry wonderland, and some highlands further up. These areas once again play into that small but dense motif we have. They're not full levels by themselves, but just smaller areas that really challenge your scavenging skills as you traverse through them. The reason I call them sets is because of the scale, really. I would liken this to be like a theater production. So the entire island would be the theater where a play is taking place. Then each area would be the set change for each act of the production. The stage sets are small, but very detailed images of where the story is taking place. Pretty much the same approach here. It works very well and doesn't suffer from the new Super Mario Bros. Issue of feeling like a generic blend over. Every area feels unique and like an actual place. That can't be overstated, you guys. Making an environment feel lived in and like a real location is not easy, especially for platformers. You have to strike the balance of designing what's essentially an obstacle course that people call their home. I always commend developers who are able to hit that mark, and Conbunn Cardboard is no exception. This game's presentation is thoughtful and strives to keep players engaged in the world. It works hand in hand with the gameplay to deliver such a tight experience that it almost feels criminal that this game is $6 USD. So why should you play Conbunn Cardboard? Well, at face value, how could you pass up such a stellar time for 6 bones? But even deeper than that, you should play it because the developer made it. I know at the end of the day, us as developers, indie or not, work in an industry. In these videos, I try not to use altruistic based arguments as to why you should play these games. I don't want you to play something just because helping out us devs is cool, which you totally still should do. No, I want you to play these games because the people behind them put such passion and genuine value into them. In the case of Conbunn Cardboard, it is as simple as you should play it because it's fun and cheap. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The amount of work that went into creating just this experience alone is actually crazy. I know because the developers in our Discord, which you should totally join, and not everything is a deep-seated philosophical matter that needs a database worth of explanation. I think sometimes it is good to slow down, take a break, and just enjoy the finer things of life. Like this magnificent artwork. It just speaks to my sensibilities. Just gorgeous. Absolutely magnificent. And with that, that's the end. So sad to say goodbye, but I've got to leave you now. I have a game to 100%. Until next time, everyone. Ciao.